Good morning friends. Today I am covering the fourth lecture of the subject DAR and the unit is first unit. In the previous three lectures we have discussed about algorithms, pseudocodes, algorithm and the technology, and then we covered one sorting algorithm which is basically the insertion sort, and the detailed analysis of insertion sort we have covered. Now in this lecture we will continue the topic of asymptotic notations, and then after that we will cover the topic of merge sort and its analysis. Okay. Now earlier you noticed that in insertion sort, when we discussed the insertion sort, you noticed that in best case, when we were analyzing the insertion sort on the basis of best case, we get an equation an plus b. And when we were analyzing the insertion sort on the basis of worst case, we get the equation an square plus bn plus c. And on the basis of that, I told you that the order of growth of insertion sort in best case is of order n, and in the worst case it is of order of n square. That is, the running time in best case is better compared to the worst case, and these are basically known as the order of growth, you can see. And for that we use the notation that in the best case we were using the notation of theta of n, and in the worst case we were using the notation of theta of n square. And I have not discussed about these. These notations are basically asymptotic notations, and in this lecture we will discuss about these notations. Okay. Now before understanding this, first we will try to understand why, when we analyze an algorithm, why we basically measure its order of growth or growth of function. We can say the order of growth of the running time of an algorithm basically provides two important information. First is it gives a simple characterization of the algorithm's efficiency. That is, how efficient an algorithm is. It is told by the order of growth. And second, it allows us to compare. The relative performance of alternative algorithms. If there are multiple algorithms for the same problem, for example, if we talk about for sorting, if there are multiple algorithms, let's say there is one is the merge sort, one is the insertion sort, other is the heap sort, then the order of growth allow us to compare the relative performance of alternative algorithms. That is, which algorithm is more efficient compared to the other in terms of time. Although we sometimes determine the exact running time of an algorithm as we did for insertion sort, the extra precision is not usually worth the effort of computing it. For large enough inputs, you can say the multiplicative constants and lower order terms of an exact running time are dominated by the effects of the input cell itself. That is, in this, you can say, for example, we told that the worst case running time for insertion sort was this. Then here A, B, C are constant and n is basically input. Then you can say, if we take the large input, then in the large inputs, these multiplicative constants are basically have very less importance and we can ignore them. And for large value, it is dominated by n square. And we are saying that the running time of algorithm is order of n square. Okay. Now, what do you mean by asymptotic efficiency of an algorithm, or what do you mean by asymptotic notation? You can understand this. Okay. You can say, when we look at input sizes large enough, to make the order of growth of the running time relevant, we are studying the asymptotic efficiency of algorithms. That is, we are concerned with how the running time of algorithm, that is how the running time of algorithm increases with the size of the input in the limit as the also you can say as the size of the input increases without limit. An algorithm that is asymptotically more efficient will be the best choice for all but very small inputs. Okay. Now coming to the asymptotic notation, the topic of asymptotic notations, that is you can say if we talk about asymptotic notations, they are basically depending upon the working in the subject. You can say they have designed basically 5 types of notations which are basically used to understand the efficiency of the algorithm. That is, earlier we noticed that when we study any algorithm, we can analyze on the basis of 3 situations. One is the best case, other is the average case, and last one was the worst case. For example, if I told you that when we are sorting the elements in ascending order, we say that the worst case is if the array is reverse sorted, best case is when the array is already sorted, and average case is in between them. The best case provides us the best time of the algorithm, that is what is the minimum time which algorithms will take. Worst case tells us for a given input what is the maximum time an algorithm is taking. For example, we talk about insertion sort, the maximum time was of order of n square, and average is between best and worst case. Depending upon these cases, basically there are 5 types of notations which we will be studying, which basically covers the best case, that is you can say the lower bound, that is the minimum time. Also covers the worst case, which basically tells the upper bound or maximum time, and the average case, which is basically the average time we are talking about. So depending upon this, there are basically 5 types of notations which we will be covering, and these notations are, the first notation is basically known as the big O notation, denoted by, you can say, big O, be represented by big O. Second is the big omega notation, which is denoted by omega. Third is the theta notation, which is denoted by theta. Fourth is the small o notation, denoted by small o, and last one is basically small omega notation, small omega notation, denoted by small omega, that is W. These are basically 5 types of notations which are used to define the upper bound of the algorithm, that is the maximum time, lower bound, and average bound. These are basically denoted by, these are basically covered by these notations. Now, first we will discuss the big O notation. Okay. First we will discuss about the big O notation. First one is the big O notation, and it is denoted by big O. It is denoted by big O. Then what is basically big O notation? When we have only an asymptotic upper bound, that is, we are given any function, and for this function we are finding only the upper bound for the function, then it is denoted by big O notation. For example, if we say, let there is a function fn, okay, where n is any input, which is basically an asymptotically positive function, then we can say, if there is a function gn, which is acting, which is basically, you can say, which is also an asymptotically positive function, and which acts as an upper bound for function fn, then it is denoted by like this. Okay, that is, we say that for fn function, gn function is acting as an upper bound. What does it mean? It means that how can we mathematically define it? We can say that big O of g of n is equal to fn, such that you can say there exists a positive constant c and input n naught, such that you can say 0 is less than equal to fn is less than equal to cgn for all n greater than equal to n. What does this refer? This is basically the mathematical definition of Big-O notation. We simply say that if fn is an asymptotically positive function and gn is also an asymptotically positive function, then if gn is acting as an upper bound for fn, that is basically this notation is used to find the upper bound, asymptotically upper bound on the function, then we denote it like that. For fn function, gn function is acting as an upper bound, such that if there exists a positive constant c, that is, there is basically a positive constant c and an input n naught, such that if I multiply gn with the constant c, then the value of this function is always greater than or equal to the function fn for all input n which are greater than or equal to n naught. That is, what does it mean? That if you understand by diagrammatically, you can say, let's say if there is n as an input, for example, if you are solving an array, then n is the input, then I say that if this is basically your function fn, okay, if this is your function fn, then you can say that for this function you can see that, let's say there is a gn function. If I multiply it by the constant c, then for the input n naught, after this input, the value of gn function is always acting as an upper bound for fn. That is, it is bounding the function fn with the upper bound. For example, if I say let there is a, as the function is basically positive function we are taking, let's say if there is a, for example, function fn which is equal to 3n plus, let's say 4, okay, and I have to find an upper bound for this, and let's say there is basically a gn function which acts as an upper bound for that, then by opening this equation you will notice that 3n plus 4 will be less than equal to c of gn. Let's say if I take the gn function as n, then you will notice that 3n plus 4 will be less than equal to c multiplied by n, if I am taking gn as n. Then for what constant, as mathematically you notice that this is simply an inequality, you have to find the value of only c and the value of n naught, for which this value is always greater than or equal to this function. You will notice that if I take the value of input n as, let's say, 3, if I take constant as 4, let's say for example I am taking, and the input if I take, let's say, as 4, then you will notice that this value will be 16 and this value also will be 16. Then you will notice that if I take input less than 4, then for that value, this value will be, the fn function value will be greater than the gn function. Hence we can say that for this function, you can notice that gn function will act as upper bound for the constant, it is basically the minimum constant 4, and for all input greater than or equal to 4, this equation will be satisfied. In this way we basically calculate the Big-O notation. Just simply remember that Big-O function is acting is only used to calculate the upper bound of the function. That is, it is bounding the function fn by the upper bound. That is, from the upper it is bounding. Okay. But one thing remember, that this function does not tell whether the function gn, which is bounding the function fn through upper, is how much is basically a tighter bound or loose bound. That is, for this equation, you can notice that if I am considering this function only, you will notice that if I say the fn function is 3n plus 4, then this, for this function, this is basically an upper bound. You notice that for, if I take the constant c is equal to 4 and input greater than equal to 4, then this equation is satisfied. Okay. Other than that, you will notice that if I take this function instead of linear function, if I take a quadratic function, then also it could act as an upper bound. You will notice that if I take the constant c is equal to 1, let's say, and all input greater than equal to 4, if you take it, then this equation will also be satisfied. Because when you open this equation, this will be in the form of this, then 3 and 4 will be less than or equal to cn square, c is 1 and n square. Therefore, if you take the input 4, this will be satisfied. Also, if I take this equation, then this can also be act as upper bound. That is, I want to say that for a linear function can act as an upper bound. Other than linear function, with the other functions which are of higher degree than linear function, that is square function, cubic function, and with the power of 4 function, all will act as an upper bound for this, for a particular constant and for a particular input greater than or equal to 4, for a particular input. Notice that this is basically one answer. Other than that, many answers could be calculated. Big O notation basically tells the upper bound. It does not tell how much tight or loose bounded it is. Then you will notice that if I take this equation, then you notice that these are basically known as the loose bounds. These are known as the basically loose bounds, and this type of bound is basically known as the tighter bound. I will say that this is basically the asymptotically tight upper bound. These are basically asymptotically loose bounds. Okay. Now coming to the next notation. The second notation is basically omega notation. The second notation is known as the omega notation. Second is basically the omega notation, and omega notation is denoted by big omega. Basically, it is denoted by omega, and it is basically used to represent the, as we know that just big O notation was representing an asymptotic upper bound. Similarly, omega notation provides an asymptotically lower bound. That is, for a function, gn function will act as the lower bound. That is, if I change this and I say that if fn is asymptotically positive function and gn function is acting as an lower bound for fn, then it is denoted by this. That is, for fn function, gn function is acting as a lower bound, and mathematically you will write as omega of g of n is equal to fn, such that there exists a positive constant c and n naught, such that as gn function is acting as a lower bound for fn, it means that when I multiply, that is, this equation will be changed. That is, as this is acting as a lower bound, that its value is smaller, then you will notice that 0 is less than or equal to c multiplied by gn is less than or equal to fn. That is, if I multiply gn function with some constant c, then the result is always smaller than the function fn for all input n which are greater than or equal to n naught. That is, diagrammatically you will notice that if this is basically an fn function, and this is, let's say, CGN function, then you will notice that after this input, you will notice that after this input, when we multiply Gn function with C, after this input you will notice that all the values of Gn function are acting as a lower bound for Fn function. It is they are below Fn. Below this value of Fn, you notice that sometimes Fn is small, greater, and sometimes Gn is larger. Here notice that Fn is larger, and here notice that Gn is larger. That is, we are finding an input after which Gn function is always acting as a lower bound for Fn. Okay. For example, if I say that 3n plus 4 is the Fn function, and let's say if Gn function is acting as a lower bound for this function, then if I take the value of Gn as n, it means that 3n plus 4 for this function Gn is acting as a lower function. That is, if I multiply Gn with C, then its result should always be less than or equal to 3n plus 4. Okay, by this equation. If I take constant as 3 and Gn function as n, then you will notice that for all input n greater than or equal to 1 and constant is equal to 3, this equation will be satisfied. You will notice that this result is always smaller than this function for all input greater than or equal to 1. That is, you can see that for 3n plus 4, Gn function, that is if this is a linear function and I take another linear function, will act as lower bound for all constant 3 and input greater than or equal to 1. This equation is satisfied. One thing here also remember that omega notation also does not tell that whether this lower bound is a tighter lower bound or whether this lower bound is a loose lower bound. So if I take this linear function, then you note that if the function is 3n plus 4, then the linear function will act as the lower bound. Also, you will notice that the constant function will also act as a lower bound for this function. You can solve with the help of these equations. You can calculate the result. But these are basically are acting as a lower bound for this. If I take let's say quadratic equation, for example 3n square plus 4n plus 6, then omega n square will act as lower bound for this function. For this linear function will act as a lower bound, and also you will notice that a constant function is also acting as a lower bound. That is, I want to tell you that, let's understand that if the function is quadratic function, then that quadratic function can act as a lower bound for this function, and other functions which are of lower degree than the quadratic function will also act as a lower bound for this function. But just remember that if the function is of degree 2 and the bound function is also of degree 2, then these type of functions are known as the tighter bounds. These type of functions are known as the tighter bounds, and these are basically known as the loose bounds. Both are correct. Basically, omega notation and big O notations, if you see the definition in the subject, you will notice that omega notation and big O notations are simply saying that the function should act. Omega notation simply said that the function should act as the lower bound for the other function, that is Gn should act as the lower bound for Fn, but how loose or how tight it is not telling. Similarly, similarly O function, big O function is also saying that Gn function should act as the upper bound for Fn. But how tighter upper bound it is or how loose upper bound it is not telling. But to make a difference between these, we have basically two more notations we will be studying. And here in this subject, when we are talking about big omega notation and big O notation, we are basically talking about only tighter bounds. It is tighter upper bounds and tighter loose bounds we are talking about. Just remember here that tighter bounds are those bounds in which the function which is bounding, that degree, and the function which is bounded, that degree should be same. If both degrees are same, that is here it is quadratic and here it is quadratic, then we say it is basically acting as a tighter bound. other functions are acting as the loose bound. Okay. Now, if we talk about the third notation, which is known as the theta notation. Okay. Coming to the third notation, which is basically known as the theta notation, and it is an important notation while working in this subject. Theta notation. Theta notation, we say if a function is bounding from upper and lower both, then it is denoted by theta notation. That is, I am saying that if there is an fn function and I am saying that gn function is bounding the fn by upper and lower both, then it is denoted by theta notation. That is, if I am saying for fn function gn function is as a theta function, then I am saying that for fn function gn function is bounding. For fn function gn function is bounding the fn function from upper and lower both. Mathematically, you can write that theta of g of n is equal to fn such that there exist positive constants C1, C2 and N naught such that what they say that if there is an fn function, then gn function is acting as the upper bound. That is, I am multiplying gn function with the constant C2, that it is acting as the upper bound for it, and why I multiply it by a constant G1, C1, then it is acting as the lower bound for fn. And these are basically greater than or equal to 0. That is, these all functions are asymptotically positive functions. That is, if I multiply gn with some constant C1, then it is acting as the lower bound for fn, and if I multiply this gn with the constant C2, then it is acting as the upper bound for fn. But both functions here, notice that, are same function. Mathematically, diagrammatically, you will notice that if diagrammatically I show you, if we are taking the n as the input and I say that there is basically an fn function, okay, then you will notice that if I multiply like this, let's say this is the C1 gn and I say that C2 gn, then just remember that you will notice that if you that if I am multiplying gn with C2, then it is acting as upper bound at this point, and when I multiply gn with C1, then it is acting as upper bound at this point. Then you can notice that this is basically the point, and not after which you notice that when I multiply gn with C1 and I multiply gn with C2, then for this gn is acting as a lower bound and also gn is acting as the upper bound. That is, basically, if you check this portion, this is basically the omega. That is, gn function is acting as a lower bound, and if you see this portion, you will notice that it is basically the big O. That is, theta notation is covering the lower bound as well as upper bound both. That is, it is covering the omega and big O notation both. Hence, we say that theta notation is a stronger bound. Hence, we represent our results when we analyze an algorithm and the equations which will come in. We try to represent those equations in the basis of theta notation because it is a stronger notation. Hence, when we analyze the insertion sort, we were using the notation of theta notation. Okay. For example, if you notice that if I say 3n plus 4 is the fn function, then you will notice that 4n will act as an upper bound. We have seen in big O case for all input greater than or equal to 4, and you will notice that 3n is acting as the lower bound for this function for all input greater than or equal to 1. Here you will notice that this is basically the gn function. Okay, this is basically the gn function, and the constant C2 is 4 and constant C1 is 3. Hence, you can notice that for 3n plus 4, if I denote it by theta of n, then you can say that for 3n plus 4, linear function is acting as an upper and lower bound for all input. For all input, here it is 1 and here it is 1, then we take the maximum value greater than or equal to 4, and for constant C1 is equal to 3 and for constant C2 is equal to 4. Hence we say that this is satisfying this equation. Okay. Now we have understand that big O notation is for representing the upper bound, theta notation is used to represent the upper and lower bound both, and small big omega notation is used to represent the lower bound, and in this way we solve these particular equations. Okay. Now there is basically a relationship between these three notations, which is denoted by a theorem, and I am writing this theorem here only and try to prove it by yourself. Okay. The theorem is that. The theorem is like that. You can like this. There is a theorem. You can like this like that. The theorem is like that. You can say for any two functions. For any two functions. For any two functions, you can say, let's say these functions are f and gn. F and gn, we will write it. We can say we have fn is equal to theta of gn. We have fn is equal to theta of gn if and only if and only if fn is equal to big O of gn and also fn is equal to omega of gn. And fn is equal to omega of gn. Okay. That is, we say that for any two function f and gn, a gn field function will act as both upper and lower bound for fn if gn is acting as an upper bound for fn and gn is acting as a lower bound for fn. And we have seen in the theorem, in the example which we have covered. Okay. Now coming to the next topic, which is known as basically the small o notation. Small o notation. Just remember that to make a difference between that, I have told that the big O notation earlier was used to represent both. It can represent the loose upper bound and tighter upper bounds. But to make a differentiation, we basically use big O notation to represent only the tighter bounds, and we use small o notation to represent the loose bound. That is, if there is basically fn function, then gn function will act as a lower loose bound, asymptotically loose bound for loose upper bound for fn, such that you can say such that if 0 is less than or equal to fn is less than cgn, that is, if we multiply the gn function with the constant c, then its result is always greater than fn, not equal to. Then we say that small o notation acts as the you can say acts as the asymptotically loose upper bound for fn function. Okay, that is, let's say if fn function is, for example, n square and gn function, let's say I take as n cube, then you will notice that for fn function, gn function will always act as an upper bound, and which is basically the loose upper bound. And in limit, you can see that in this case, if I calculate the limit of n tends to infinity, fn upon gn, it should always come to 0. Okay. Then the last notation is basically the omega notation. Omega notation is, this is basically the small omega notation. By analogy, as we know, omega notation, small omega notation is to big omega notation, as small o notation was to big O notation. We use omega notation to denote a lower bound that is not asymptotically tight. It is basically used to represent the asymptotically loose lower bounds, similar to the small o notations. That is, we say that here we say that for fn function, gn function will act as the lower bound in such a way that 0 is less than or equal to Cgn is less than or equal to Fn. That is, if I multiply the Gn function with the constant C, then its result is always smaller than the Fn function. That is, if I say, or in reverse you can say, one definition is like that, or you can say that, let's say if Fn is n cube and Gn is, let's say, n square, then Gn function will always act as the asymptotically lower bound for Fn function. Okay. And in terms of limit, we will consider, if I apply limit here and calculate the result Fn upon Gn, then if the result is always coming to infinity, then Gn function will act as the lower loose bound for Fn function. Okay. These are basically the fundamental concept related to the asymptotic notations.